Hey folks, in today's video, we're going to go over all the major metabolic processes. That means building and breaking things down in cells. We'll talk about animal and plant cells. The first thing to remember is that no matter what kind of organism you are, you got to do stuff. That means building things, breaking things, moving things, copying, replacing. This is going to happen all the time. There's no point in a life that cells aren't doing something, and that requires energy. And what you've learned in this class so far is there is a specific molecule that we're using as sort of a placeholder for energy, and that molecule is called ATP. And for this class, the best way to think of it is as a rechargeable battery. If you take other classes like chemistry and biochemistry classes, you'll learn more about it. But for this class, just think of ATP as a rechargeable battery, where ATP is the charged form or the one with the energy, and ADP is the version that's used up its energy. So to move stuff, to break stuff, you're going to have to use billions of this per second, nonstop, every cell, anywhere in the living thing. And that means that no matter what you're doing, not only are you using billions of this every second, you're going to have to regenerate those. So you have to recharge the ATP nonstop. And this is a process that's going to be called, if you have access to oxygen, aerobic cellular respiration. And our primary fuel for this is sugar. The most notable sugar is glucose. So you can see at the top of this diagram, we got glucose plus oxygen being combined in, and you can see this kind of in the background, organelles known as mitochondria. And that process is going to release a bunch of waste products that are CO2 and H2O, carbon dioxide and water. The benefit of doing this process, you're not wasting the sugar. The benefit of this is you recharge that ATP, and that allows you to build, move, break, create, produce, expel, whatever it is that your cells are doing. Okay. So that means in your bodies, this is the kind of energy that you're going to need to maybe send a nerve signal down to your legs and then contract the muscle cells and then kick a ball, or even just breathe. All those things require the energy. So this again is aerobic cellular respiration happening in mitochondria of our cells. Okay. Now, if this is a leaf cell in a plant, things get significantly more complicated. Photosynthetic organisms, the majority of them, have organelles called chloroplasts. And chloroplasts, as you know, do a process called photosynthesis. And the purpose of photosynthesis is to build sugar, specifically that one up there called glucose. That's the eventual goal of doing photosynthesis type processes. This is happening in the chloroplasts, and you can see that CO2, carbon dioxide, and water are being combined to generate the oxygen and the glucose. And I've left out the numbers just to make this simpler. In previous diagrams, you've seen this with the numbers added. Okay, the energy for this, because we're making something bigger, you have to actually provide energy, is sunlight. You all know that already. Now, the part that we tend to forget, and this is something I'm going to pause on because most everybody forgets this diagram is really misleading. It suggests that you build glucose and burn it, build glucose and burn it, build glucose and burn it in basically a zero-sum cycle. And that is not even close to correct for a photosynthetic organism. In most photosynthetic organisms, you are building way more glucose, way more sugar than you're using up at any given time. You are absorbing massive quantities of CO2 from the atmosphere and water from, for example, down in the ground using your roots. And that's going to produce hugely more glucose than you're using up and allows you to basically expel a bunch of excess oxygen into the atmosphere. And this is what plant leaves are doing. Now, all of this excess glucose is incredibly important. The reason that you're building this extra glucose is, one, as a plant leaf, it's to feed every other part of the organism, right? This is to feed the stem cells and the cells in the bark and the cells in the roots, every other cell. And just as importantly, this glucose has all the stuff you need to build the more molecules, to make more cells, to make the plant bigger, right? If you want to grow, you're going to have to make starches to store glucose in your roots. You're going to need fiber to make more, trunk effectively and stem, all the structural parts of the trees. You're going to need fats and oils to store in your nuts and seeds. And if you have in the soil access to nitrates, phosphates, and sulfates, that's the last bit of this diagram that you need to think about. This is what allows you to build the other molecules necessary for living things to grow. So in the end, big picture, all organisms need energy to do anything. That energy is found in a molecule called ATP. To regenerate that ATP, we're doing aerobic cellular respiration. Generally, we burn glucose in the presence of oxygen to do that. And then all plant cells, specifically the ones in the leaves, that is, do photosynthesis. And that is what generates additional glucose, more than the stuff that you end up burning. And that additional glucose is used to grow and reproduce. Hope that helped everybody. See you next time.